Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our attendees, wherever you're joining from across the world. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and particularly welcome you to this session on simplifying security and compliance with our partners at AWS and, of course, with HTCD. While I'm doing the introduction today, and my name is Sean Mulchandani, the founder and CEO of HTCD, I'd love to introduce our presenters for today, one being Ross Warren from AWS, who's a product SA from the AWS Security Lake team, one of the absolute newest, hottest, and most impactful services that Amazon and AWS actually have out there. And I know Ross is very much looking forward to sharing more about Security Lake and the impact it can have in your organization with you. And along with Ross and me is Orika Orrie, who's a co-founder of HTCD and also our vice president of operations. She'll be sharing a little bit about how HTCD can help you particularly focus on security, compliance, and along with, of course, a brief presentation, we have a very exciting demo. There are two things I want to mention before we move forward, which are one, this session is being recorded, so it will be available for viewing and playback later. And the other is if you do not consent to being recorded, you may drop at this time. That said, attendees are not visible to each other, and we do respect everyone's privacy. So that's just there. One other thing, as we go forward, is you will notice a Q&A tab or a forum to ask questions. Please do ask questions at any time throughout today's webinar, and we'd love to answer these as we go along and also have a discussion at the end. I will be moderating this Q&A forum, so as folks ask, I may bring those up for Ross and Orika, our presenters, and occasionally chime in with a response or two myself. But with that, once again, welcome. And I'd like to quickly tell you that today we're going to focus on a few things. One, with security data and security overall being such paramount importance to organizations, and of course to you, given y'all are here today with us, we'd like to talk about the problems that arise and specifically what we're solving for. And how do we make things simple? How do we make it frictionless? How do we have security enable the business? Beyond that, Ross will be talking all about Security Lake. So don't worry if you haven't heard of it. We'll cover everything from what it is and most importantly, how can it help you? Orika is covering on top of that in terms of how HTCD works with Security Lake and beyond, as well as other native services from AWS, and how that actually helps you simplify security and compliance, and then of course our demo. But with that, Ross, I'd like to hand it over to you, please. And if you can take our audience through, of course, what is Security Lake and really what's all the hype around it, what's all the buzz. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sean. You guys can hear me okay? I was having audio issues. Okay, cool. All right, thank you very much again. I'm actually really looking forward to the demo too. Been a lot of work on the back end, so I'm excited to see what all of the work has come to look like. A little bit about Security Lake, right? Over the years, we've all built data lakes. We've all thought about how do we get all of this inconsistent data that I've got in buckets or in EC2 instances or on-prem. How do I manage all of that? And we've put together scripts and other kinds of solutions. And we heard a lot of that from customers as we were talking about these things. And so not only are they inconsistent places, not only are they, lots of different zones and formats, they're also growing more and more. I don't think I have to tell anybody on the call today that the data I had a year ago, 5 years ago, is probably a lot more than what I've got today or what I'm even predicting for the future. And because It was inconsistent. It was incomplete. There really wasn't a good, efficient use case there. I know the title says inefficient use of data across use cases. But if you think about the SOC team needs a copy of the data, the BI team needs some portion of that data. And now we're kind of back to making it inconsistent and incomplete and moving the data off to different places and not keeping control of it. And so that's one of the things we heard about as we were discussing what does a data lake, what does a security lake mean to our customers. The word security is in there on purpose. Even if you had all of those other three kind of subjects right when you were looking at your own data lakes, lots of times we saw that, sure, you've got everything in one place, but who has access to that data? It was the wild, wild west. You get access to your S3 bucket. Do I know that Ross only has data? Do I know that Ross only has access to these kinds of data? Or does this team? And so part of what we'll learn in a minute with what Security Lake does is actually helps coordinate not just a collection of logs and making these three other things easier, but also giving you guardrails out of the box of who can put data in the data lake and who can consume data from the data lake. If you're at all familiar with AWS, you know how to write IAM policies, you know how to do trust policies and permission boundaries. Maybe you don't want to do that anymore. Security Lake helps coordinate all of that. I'm not hiding any of it. You can go look at and see what I did, but you don't ever have to go into the IAM console to very, very easily set up a security lake with security data lake from AWS. Next slide, please. All right, so why Amazon Security Lake? Part of that inconsistent data, the not knowing of what I've got or where I've got, is a huge challenge. What Security Lake, one of the value adds that we have from Security Lake is being able to very, very easily collect, let's say, all of your VPC flow, all of your WAF logs in any region, anywhere in the AWS, in your org, and it didn't matter how many flows or WAFs you have sitting out there. It is less than 5 minutes to start collecting that data and get that into S3 and then into Athena if you choose, you want to consume it from that. So that middle sort of bullet point there, we make it very, very easy to collect AWS logs. I had a customer say, we turned on WAF integration when you announced it, and we were done in less than an hour, and we thought we had done it wrong. They were so used to doing it the very manual way that they were like, Ross, can you check that we did this right? And so we went through a couple steps, and they were perfectly fine. You can also bring in your custom logs. We'll talk about what OCSF means in a minute, but the ability to be able to put OCSF converted logs into Security Lake also is part of that first bullet point or that first icon that I had there earlier, making sure I've got all the data normalized and into a central place. Security Lake helps, as I said, build that up, make you easy to ingest the logs and bring everything together. How do I put this succinctly? I said it's 5 minutes. You can turn on Security Lake and have all of your VPC flow logs into Security Lake in a queryable or shareable to something else in 5 minutes. Really want to see demo? I can show you. We do it live to show you how easy it is. Great, Ross. You've got logs in there. I now have seen, you start thinking about, I've got all these Lambdas. I've got all these processes that are doing all this normalization of CloudTrail and VPC flow, and you can get rid of that code. You can stop managing maybe those Lambdas or those pipelines with AWS logs. It is done. You can now start doing the fun, cool security things. You don't ever have to go into the IAM console, the S3 console, the EventBridge console, SQS console. You don't ever have to do any of that to bring data in or to start sharing the data. When any data comes into Security Lake, it is in OCSF, which is Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. It's an open sourced framework. Lots of many people who are contributing to that. When I stop talking, I'll put the link into OCSF into the chat so folks can go take a look at that. But those logs are all normalized now, not just AWS logs. There are lots of folks who are providing mapping conversions to OCSF to bring them into Security Lake. Everything's stored in S3 bucket. We all love S3 buckets. It's cheap. It's inexpensive, and it is very durable. You want to start moving the data around. I can help coordinate in the console any rolling up regions from a specific region to one region. I want to dive into changing my lifecycle policy on my S3 buckets, on my logs. I can do that all in the Security Lake console. So it's a managed service helping us bring logs in, normalize those AWS logs, and then manage who's going to have access to that through a subscriber mechanism, either S3 or Lake Formation will provide, read-only tables off to someone being a product who knows how to actually utilize cross-count tables and do sort of a federated query into that. Hopefully I did everything on that slide. Next slide. I'm excited about Security Lake. I have been for 2+ years, and so I could talk for a very long time about this. And so if you've got questions about Security Lake, please put them in the chat, and we can continue to talk at the very end. I think I hit a lot of this. If you remember those first 4 sections or lessons learned that I had at the very beginning there, and I hinted at Security Lake is normalizing that data into OCSF. It's again, an open sourced framework. There's lots of companies. I forgot the number now. 200, 300 companies who are participating in the open sourced community. OCSF is not an AWS thing. You put your OCSF hat on or you put your AWS hat on, but the logs that are in Security Lake are normalized to OCSF. So it's a common language. It's a common schema. I can now do a benefit of normalization. Think about how many DNS log types we have out there, right? There's AWS Route 53, there's Cisco Umbrella, there's Microsoft Bind. I'm probably missing something else. Oh, sorry, not Microsoft, but Microsoft DNS and Bind, sorry. Think about in the past how you've had to do a query in a SIM or in a SQL tool, and what does that query look like? All of those get put into a DNS activity class in OCSF. And now no matter what I've got, where that data is coming from, I'm doing one kind of query across all of my DNS logs. And I can share that. I can easily show somebody how to do that. They don't have to know that it's Cisco or AWS. Just one of the benefits of normalization. I hinted at, we also help manage S3 lifecycle policies, S3 rollup. You can move stuff to, Glacier, however you want. We are just abstracting away what you would see in the S3 console just to make that data custodian persona stay in the console and manage the data from the console. And again, data visibility, making it central. That very last point that I hinted at the very beginning, again, was the security team, the BI team, the ML team, the AI team, I gotta say it, they all don't have to have different copies of the data now with the different subscriber mechanisms that I have, everybody can federate into the lake, or they still can take little bits and pieces of their data, but you don't have vendor lock-in because OCSF, and so the data can move easily, and or you can federate, you can search on the lake with the data that's in the lake. That was really quick. I think that was my last slide. Or is there one more? Orika, you're on mute. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Apologies. Yeah. There is one more. I think it just skipped past it. There you go. That one, the use cases.
Okay. Yep. So I hinted at a bunch of these a little bit. Because we're normalizing, because we're centralizing that data, it is now easy to analyze years of security data quickly. That's in S3. One of the things we do under the covers is we actually are building Athena and Glue tables for customers who want to maybe use SQL. Or in the federated model, you can use SQL, you can use Athena, you can use Spark to now write jobs against that data. It's normalized. It's now in S3. The storage cost is inexpensive. And so it makes it very, very easily. Simplifying that compliance and monitoring reporting, it's all coming to one place. It's all normalized. I can tell the auditor, yes, I am collecting all my data. I can easily get a report of what logs, what accounts, what regions are actually all being collected. Security investigations. Security is near and dear to my heart. I've been in security for 20 plus years. And so being able to give a team access to all the logs that they have wanted for years, but because of cost or technology or other reasons, they couldn't have VPC flow logs. They couldn't have all of CloudTrail. And now with Security Lake, I'm able to not only centralize that, normalize it, but now they can easily have access either through the federation into the lake, or moving some of the data, but now knowing the rest of the data is over in the lake. It makes it very important. It helps broaden that scope of what the security persona has access to now that I've got data normalized in a lake. That was very quick. I normally can talk for, as I said, an hour plus about Security Lake. But I'm excited to see the demo. So let's, without further ado, let's turn it over to Orika.
Great. Thanks so much, Ross. That was really informative. So as Ross says, there's a lot of use cases with Security Lake, and we found that it's really a great tool. So let me start with what is HTCD? What do we do? So we are human trusted cyber defense, and what we do is CPR for all your clouds. That's AWS and other clouds. So CPR stands for compliance, prioritization, and remediation. And what's really amazing is that with our tool, you can save time and save your analyst time. So when compared to manual methods, you can save 83% time going manually through all of your services and ensuring they're compliant. We'll summarize that for you and get it all there in one place. And with your prioritization, no more needing to triage every single finding, no more needing to get through everything in one go. All you do is you click prioritize with AI and we'll get it all handled for you. And then finally, remediation. Copy paste your remediation into your code, deploy it, and you're done. You don't have to go search the internet, figure it out, go onto that Stack Overflow site and try and understand, how do I fix this? And then to encapsulate it all, we have observability. Maybe you just want to see exactly what's going on in your environment in terms of cost, in terms of usage. What is that one user doing? Is that user doing something suspicious? Let's check it out. Or as an app team, I want to monitor these 3 services and only these 3. You can create a dashboard or do an AI search to get that done. So that's what we are. We're HTCD. So how do we actually help you in reality? And I'll give you a few use cases when I go over the demo. But the reality is that our customers are saving up to 150 hours per week of labor. And this is through methods such as not doing manual intervention anymore for their prioritization, not having to triage and ensure that they're addressing all of the vulnerabilities. They just use HTCD. Not needing to go and research, like I said, all of the remediation, how to fix it, how to sort it out. Just use our code and deploy it. And finally, not having to go and search through a lot. And like Ross has said, AWS Security Lake does everything for you. So what can we do? We can help you to see that everything and understand what's going on, and then use our AI to not have to construct queries. They're all there, 500 built-in queries and unlimited AI queries. So HTCD is built AI first. Why don't I show you rather than talking about it? I'm going to switch over to our demo. Right, I'm hoping that shares shortly. Okay, so let's start with compliance. We all know compliance is every company's problem. We have multiple companies that are doing multiple different things. You might have high trust compliance, you might have PCI DSS, NIST CSF. As a compliance manager or a team that has to ensure that your team is compliant, why do you need to spend sleepless nights worrying about those vulnerabilities, whether all your resources are compliant? What if there's a way to bring it all under control and ensure that you're confident about it? What we have here is our dashboard for PCI DSS, but we can do quite a few others. And what you would be able to see here is your AWS compliance along with your other clouds. You can click through and see even further detail. So if we wanted to understand what are our secure configurations for the PCI DSS system components and how exactly do they adhere and what am I adhering to, we could see that. If we wanted to go further into cryptography, we could go into that. So what does this actually mean? And I'll pop back into that dashboard shortly. But here's a real life story of one of our clients. They're a healthcare company who needed to keep up with some stringent regulatory standards. Using HTCD, they actually helped improve their security posture and ensure that they were in compliance, working through each of the findings one by one. Like I said, you can see over here, these are the resources that are not compliant, and this is how you remediate it. You can go through and understand exactly what the issue is. In this environment, it's S3 buckets. So you could very simply go through, walk through all of your S3 buckets, understand exactly what needs to be enabled, and go ahead and enable that or use the code to enable it. If you wanted to see even more data, you could go down and understand the raw data that we are pulling this from, which is from our magical tool called AWS Security Lake. And the great thing is, this is not the only way to manage your findings. If you wanted to see a little bit more detail, understand a little bit more in your environment, we could then have you prioritize your findings. And what does prioritization mean? Well, let me show you. We'll navigate over to prioritization. And the great thing is that you'll be able to see at a quick glance exactly what's going on. What are your high impact findings? What are your top 5 impacted resources? Where do you need to triage and figure this out? But if you didn't want to do that, you could click on our little dashboard here and see these are all of the findings that you have in your environment and across your other clouds, not just AWS. You'll see exactly where they're from, whether it's Security Hub, Config, Inspector. You could understand the details about it. When was it first seen? When was it last seen? Which resources are impacted? But again, as you can see from our numbers here, we have 200 critical findings. And like I like to say, if everything's critical, then nothing is critical. Where do you start? Where do you need to go from here? And how do you tackle this? Because 200 can feel very overwhelming to someone. So what we do is we have this very magical prioritize with AI button. This does take a few hours to do as it is going through all of your findings. So what I've done is I've prioritized one for you before this. So as you can see, I'm taking in data from Inspector, Config, Security Hub, and Guard Duty, all through AWS Security Lake. And what we've done here is, as you can see, we've reprioritized all of your findings. So now out of the 200, we have 104. And unfortunately, the high ones have gone up, but it is a bit more thorough. And then to see exactly what that means, let's go to all findings. And here you will find exactly this, the ranking. Which ones out of these 104 critical findings do I need to address first? I'm very overwhelmed as a manager, and I don't know which one my team needs to manage first. So I just go here, I say, number one, hardware MFA should be enabled for the root user. And I tell my team, good, you need to sort this out. This is your number one priority for these accounts. If you wanted to go by finding, you can do that. Go and remediate that as your number one priority for today. And then whatever else you can get done, you can go ahead with. So the great thing is, if you needed more information, you click on it. We would be able to provide the remediation, additional data, as well as the impacted service. And the great thing is, upcoming, we have a few other features as we're building on. So let's continue down. So now that you've seen our prioritization and understands how it helps you, what is a scenario where we had this actually happen, and what are our customers seeing? So after running our HTCD prioritization tool, we had a financial services company who had only 500 medium findings in their database, in their security lake. The 500 findings were all very different and all varying. However, it wasn't giving them enough information to understand, what am I supposed to tackle, what is actually important and what is not. When we reprioritize it, we actually found that about 30 of those findings were just informational and telling them this is something that you should keep an eye on, but you don't actually need to do anything to fix it. However, these 30 are very critical and they need to be addressed immediately so that you can ensure your system is safe. And being a financial data company, they needed to ensure that no one was getting into their data anytime soon. So that covers prioritization and compliance. Next, I'm going to move on to something very cool. So like I mentioned earlier, observability is one of our facets. And if you could ask questions about your security posture in plain English, wouldn't you? I would, because for me, writing a query, going and figuring out how it's built, understanding SQL, or if you're using other languages, understanding those languages, because my company uses multiple query languages, it can be difficult. So what would really help me is an AI which can understand it, convert the query for me, and go from there. So what I'm going to do here is search show me Route 53 errors. And what our tool is doing is it's showing options of something that you might want. But if none of those options suit you from our built-in queries, you just press enter and it will show you the data. So what's going on in the background here is that our AI is analyzing your English language question and converting it to the query, whether it's SQL for AWS, KQL, and other tools. And then it's taking that data and putting it in your environment. The magic thing about HTCD is we don't keep your data. Your data remains in your environment. We don't remove it, we don't store it, we don't keep it at all. So the query is sent directly to your environment and the data is then populated back. So as you can see here, it is now generating the output, so it has been sent. And we can see these are our top 10 queried host names from Route 53. So we have, these are the app core internal, then we have our DynamoDB instances, SQS, and so on. And if I wanted to dive deeper, I could ask further questions and understand exactly what I needed to. So the great thing about being a startup is a lot of the time our customers are telling us exactly what we need to do and what will help them in their environments. And a great example of that is when we go to our user insights. So we have both organizational as well as user insights. Organizational insights tells you a little bit about your organization, what's going on. Let me click there. What's going on in it, if anyone is deleting items that they shouldn't be, who are your IAM users, who are your admins. And a really interesting thing that happened with one of our clients was they had set up their environments. Within 15 minutes, they were completely set up and able to see data in HTCD. And they actually noticed that instead of having 3 admins, as they know that their company has, they had 5. And when they investigated further, they found that their admins were not deleted as previously thought and just made inactive, which was a very large security concern for them. And this was then resolved. And that was happened within 15 minutes. And that client is still with us and still finding items that will help them. So as you can see here, you'll be able to see your overview of your environment, your cost insights, as well as endpoint activity. And as we had released this feature, one of our clients had suggested that user insights is something that would be really helpful. So I'm going to call out one of my colleagues. I'm going to look at what William's been up to for the last day. And we'll see exactly what he's been doing in terms of productivity, which is all his M365 data. Using another AWS tool, AWS App Fabric, we pull in M365 data and we'll be able to see what William's up to throughout his day in terms of M365 and other tools that App Fabric works with. But then we can also see what is William deleting, what is he creating, what is he doing within the cloud, what is he doing external to the cloud within M365. And you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. So this is really helpful when you're trying to investigate whether you have teams who are doing what they should be doing and not wasting time on other activities, and also doing access reviews. Should these teams that are accessing this service or that AWS instance, should they be doing that? And are we doing our review, our coding review correctly? So we can see how William's been very busy. He's been clicking on emails. We're able to see his email activity, if he's clicking on spam, if he's deleting items, and so on. And then we can go into his cloud insights and see exactly what's going on there. So, like I mentioned before, with all of our insights, we have about 500 pre-built queries, and we're growing each day. We have an amazing team who adds these queries as we're going and as requested by customers. But other than that, the great thing about us being a startup is that we have everything that a client would like to see. As they're working with us, we're able to see exactly what they want. So we had a client who requested a very specific compliance framework, and within 2 days, we were able to get that out. It was a medical field compliance framework, and we're able to build and deploy that within 2 days. So the great thing about HTCD is that we're enabling businesses to secure their cloud environments efficiently and effectively through CPR. So imagine having the confidence in your cloud security posture. We make it possible, and I'm hoping that I showed you how. We're happy to take any questions. I'm going to switch back to the deck. But I know we have a few questions, so Sean and Ross, I'm not sure if you want to jump on.
Sure. Well, thanks, Orika, for the demo, and I think thanks for showing some of HTCD's capabilities. I know there are quite a few more that we didn't necessarily address today, but in addition to that, I'll just say that everything you showed is also a wonderful testament to just how powerful Amazon Security Lake really is. Ross talked earlier about DNS data as an example, and as such, what you've also shown is how somebody can truly get everything from a view of their compliance frameworks and posture as it relates to various frameworks, people's email activity or SaaS utilization, and more. And of course, one of the reasons we can do such things is because Security Lake normalizes all these sources, makes it really easily available. With that, what I'll do is, we've been getting a lot of questions in the chat, which is wonderful to see. We have responded to some, but I would like to bring up some of these. And Ross, I know you've answered one, but just so our entire audience hears it, I'll ask you. Someone's asking us, how does Security Lake handle high volume data ingestion during peak periods, obviously across your AWS customer base? And are there any throttling limits? And of course, if there are, or whatever your response, how can we best and most effectively make use of Security Lake when we deploy it?
So, very good question. Thanks for repeating it. I forgot to mention that Security Lake, even though it's a managed service, it lives in the customer's account. So your high volume versus Fred's high volume versus big company number 42's volume doesn't affect what your ingest is to Security Lake. And as I hinted in the very quick answer, we're for AWS logs, we're taking it from the backplane, which is, I guess, as close to the source as is possible because it is the source. And so we have not seen throttle limits. I got customers, as I said, with petabytes a day of VPC flow logs, that they've got no issues bringing them in, dumping them to either Athena, or then pushing them or utilizing them as SIM, or other solutions that we may have just talked about. When you are bringing in custom logs, it's not from the backplane. It is, remember I said security was one of my favorite things. What Security Lake is doing for a custom source that's already in OCSF, so I'm putting that OCSF aside for a second, is I'm giving you the credentials. I'm creating a role that custom source has the ability to put data into S3. So, and why I'm saying that is, after Security Lake has set up that coordinated, that permission, that role, that allows that worker to only put data in a certain place, there's not a Security Lake API call in that data plane. It's an assume role. I'm getting really in the weeds here. It's an assume role, and then it's an S3 put, whether you're doing that with Java, Python, whatever, however you can assume a role and put data to S3. There's lots of different solutions from lots of different folks out there. You could write your own little code. That your code would be the bottleneck, not putting it to S3. And so if you're worried about custom source volume, you've got to look at your code and how do I handle it. The S3 is not going to be a throttle there at all. Did I answer all parts of that question, Sean?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Ross. And I think for our audience, just to summarize, right? I think as Ross mentioned, Security Lake is a managed service, but it's built upon it itself is highly scalable, and it's per customer. And it's built upon several highly scalable services from AWS, such as AWS S3. I think in all of our collective experience, we've never seen S3 to ever run out of storage space or be throttled and more. And I will share that, several customers of HTCD, HTCD is a huge customer of Security Lake as well. And we've never really encountered those issues even at scale. So that's a quick summary. Moving on, I do want to pick up a couple of other questions. I know someone's asking regarding compliance. We have a couple of questions. Somebody said, I want to see whether my startup is HIPAA compliant or not. How quickly can I get that analysis? And someone else says, look, how does HTCD decide whether something is compliant versus not, considering every company has different compliance policies? So I'll tackle both these. The first is, look, how quickly can you see if you're HIPAA compliant or not? 1 to 2 minutes. As Orika showed on screen for PCI as an example, it is literally 1 to 2 minutes. It is real time or just in time. So the minute you're asking, you're getting a very live snapshot of what is truly in your environment. It's not from something that may have occurred from 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Yes, it can have data that's 2 or 4 weeks old if those issues are unresolved and you are non-compliant, but it is up to the minute. And it only takes a minute or two to see how you're doing. And of course, you can keep checking that. So as your environment scales, as you have migrations into the environment, as you have employees, contractors, subcontractors operating in the environment, you do want to keep tabs on it, every day, or at least every few days, and measure compliance on a continuous basis. As it relates to how we determine whether something is compliant or not, the answer is I'll give it to you very simply in three ways. There are some frameworks, such as actually PCI DSS or the AWS Foundational Security Benchmark, where AWS has checks in place that clearly have that measure against that framework. That is number one, and so we're able to show you those. There are other frameworks such as HIPAA, HITRUST, NIST CSF, ISO 27001, SAMA for Saudi Arabia, IRAP and APRA for Australia and beyond, that HTCD shows you. Now, these frameworks have codified requirements. You can think of it on a PDF or other formats. They're just set laws. And what HTCD has, this is some of the generative AI we use in the background, is we translate all of those into actionable measurements in your cloud or clouds. And that's how we're actually able to do that real-time assessment, if you will, or compliance check and report back to you. And the third is, should you have organization-specific requirements? My background, for example, I've worked with a number of pharmaceutical and life sciences companies or finance companies who had their own variants of organization X's security framework, which were derivatives of NIST, or they were derivatives of NIST plus CIS and others. That's perfectly fine. If you let us know, we can actually have your custom framework in HTCD within 3 business days, and you can just measure on an ongoing basis. That framework, of course, remains private to you. That framework would not be accessible to other customers. But this is not something that you would spend hundreds of hours trying to implement on our platform. This is not something you go and hire a consulting company to do if you don't want to. It's something where you could have 150 pages of regulations. Just work with us, and we'll have it in as little as 3 business days, and good to go. There's a question about, is data coming in real time or is it getting stored somewhere? I think that was answered. It is real time from your cloud or clouds. So be that AWS via Security Lake or other clouds through similar mechanisms. And HTCD does not store on its side nor replicate any of that data. So your data is 100% yours. And using Security Lake as an example, you may use HTCD with AWS and Security Lake to get value from this platform. You may want to use another tool that also operates on Security Lake and is possibly complementary to HTC, or you want another point of view. Perfectly fine. It's your data, it's your compliance and sovereignty, and it's your ability to use any and all tooling you want on top of it. That's some of the amazing value that both Security Lake and HTCD provide. Will there be a recording available? Yes, we will share this recording on our YouTube and LinkedIn channels, and we will very much post links to those as well via our LinkedIn, X, and other social media channels. There's one question about major clients who use HTCD. The answer to that is, we have a number of healthcare, finance, and technology clients or customers that use HTCD. These are primarily the 3 industries, and they span North America, Africa, and the Indian subcontinent for now. If you would like to know specific names, happy to have that discussion. And please do reach out to us at contact@htcd.com, or of course, feel free to drop me a line, Sean Mulchanani. You could do the same to Orika as well. And we'll be happy to get in more detail. So that's that. Someone's asking, I know I'm going through these rapid fire, but love the engagements. What are some industry use cases where you've seen customers leveraging HTCD? Orika, do you want to answer maybe one of those? And I'm happy to share a couple more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can think of quite a few. If we had to start, I would start with the financial services industry. Like I mentioned, they are using tools such as the compliance for PCI DSS, and they've managed to get the compliance up to almost 100%, with a few remaining tools that are more on the paperwork side than the app side. Other cases are, like I've mentioned before, we have healthcare industry who is using very specifically HIPAA and high trust compliance, and they're building up on that and ensuring that that's working through. And then something not compliance related, we have a specific customer who is using our user insights to ensure that users are being adequately tracked and managed. I know there's a question to just add to that to see the login activity of how users are logged into the AWS console. They are using it specifically for that because they do have third parties who are logging in and seeing where they're accessing and if they do have the correct access controls.
I'll just add, I think there are a few use cases, very specifically, as Orika touched upon. Look, within healthcare, we've got folks using it for high trust, and more specifically, this is where they are on their journey towards getting high trust certified, and using us almost as a pre-compliance check and a mechanism to getting their house in order and getting themselves where they can say with confidence, look, we are meeting the standards for high trust, and then working with the actual certification authority to move forward. That's something that it effectively gives them a very predictable path, a predictable timeline towards getting that certification, where there's no missteps, and also a good return on investment because there's no paying a fee and doing all the work only to be delayed. And of course, the reason for his compliance is significantly on the business side, right? Because when you get compliant, you unlock certain access to certain enterprise customers and sales. You actually help improve your business's top line. So that's really the trajectory. There's another set of use cases where, for example, we have whether it's private equity, whether it's portfolio companies that have multiple companies, they're using HTCD. One of the capabilities that HTCD offers is called Lake Fortress. So everything you saw in Orika's demo, we talk about not storing data from your cloud. Well, you can see the same kinds of capabilities and actually leverage them for multiple companies, multiple entities, multiple organizations, all on a single pane of glass without commingling the data. So there's no sending data from 5 or 10 companies to a central source and then looking at it. Those 5 or 10 companies can have 5 or 10 AWS organizations, their own security lakes, their other clouds, so on and so forth. You are getting a collective view, real time and just in time, as needed to take action, along with all of the analytics, all of what's overlapping, what's different, etc., but without commingling all that data. And that has been very effective for, I would say, large enterprises, private equity, portfolio companies, and beyond. So those are just a couple. On the more technical side, something we did not anticipate, quite frankly, was things like user insights, where people are using them for everything such as insider threat detection or determining if somebody's removed data from Teams or other SaaS platforms that is considered very sensitive, or even if somebody is actually doing work and that's measured as an activity of how much they're using their SaaS applications. Very, very, very honest. Never saw that coming, but users and customers asked for it, and we said yes. This is something that we can truly deliver through Security Lake and App Fabric, and that's an outcome we've been able to deliver for them. With that, I'll see. What if I manage security for multiple customers? How can I use HTCD? I think we just answered that. I did not read that before seeing what I did, but happy to cover that again. And I see one more question. Can you talk about how this differs from what customers do today, and how is it impactful? Um, Given that question, I'll pause for a minute and say, Ross, you worked with many different organizations, many different partners, and more. Would you be able to share your opinion? And it can be good, bad, ugly, no worries. What do you think is different in what you see HTCD do with AWS and beyond? And Orika, would love to hear your thoughts after that too.
Um, I really like I know, Orika, you said it took a couple hours, but I like the reprioritization um, aspect and then being able to drill down into that because look, SOC teams are flooded with, as you said, thousands of alerts, and they need help to focus on what I need to work on today. And when I'm done with those, I can now go to number 2 and 3 and 4. But sometimes that's hard. Yes, guard duty and security hub and all of the things that feed into security hub have a severity level. But they're a little bit compartmentalized, whereas you now have the picture, sorry, HTCD now is the picture across more than just that specific security hub finding or that guard duty finding, and I can now easily give me that prioritization, especially in either a small team or in a team that is even just starting out, right? Lots of folks, there still are folks that are on-prem security folks who don't necessarily understand, get grok the way that, cloud security works. And if I'm just flooded with all these new API calls and I'm not sure what to do, having that reprioritization, I think, is a huge step forward, and then start exploring the other bits.
Got it. Thanks. Orika?
Yeah, absolutely agreed with Ross. Prioritization is one of my favorites. If I had to go with another tool about how this differs from what customers do today, a lot of what what I've seen previous before we built HTCD was multiple tools for multiple items, not just one tool managing everything. And with HTCD, as I talk to our customers and as we're working with them, we see that they're not just using us for security, they're not just using us for compliance. What they're also using us for is FinOps, for user management, for their auditing, for ensuring that their users are accessing the right tools. And it's a really great tool to, especially if you're a medium to a smaller business, it's a really great tool to use it as a one solution for all of your requirements. You don't need to buy another tool for compliance, and then another tool to manage your security, another tool to ensure that you are tackling all of the right findings. And then the third thing is a tool to actually send over your reports to external team members. We had a great discussion this morning about the reporting for compliance. It's easy to just go to HTCD, log in, download a report, and there's the report for your compliance officers. So yeah, I think that's something that I found really useful even when we're doing our own security, as we do use HTCD as our own. It's something very powerful and helps me manage everything in one spot than going to multiple different applications.
Okay. Thanks, Orika. Yeah, if I can just add to that, I think with HTC, a few things come to mind. One is it truly provides a cohesive view across multiple clouds. We've gone in depth about AWS, but when you have a true multi-cloud environment, or if you're a very large enterprise that has multiple AWS organizations, so you want that org of orgs view. This is your one cohesive view. This is your one-stop shop. The second is, it is the only solution in the market that actually helps you retain and own 100% of your data. So, and we've seen this be big as it relates to particularly the Middle East, where we have a very large set of, potential customers and a couple of initial ones, as well as Europe. So where data sovereignty is paramount in these markets, they want to use AWS in Milan, in Zurich very specifically, and beyond. And this is an example where, yes, you can have your own cloud in Zurich or in Frankfurt or in Ireland, as an example, at AWS regions. HTCD itself is served from those regions for you. It does not take your data or replicate it, etc. And maybe you have people there too. So if you want 100% sovereign cloud story, there is no competitor for that. And where we found competition, let's say on cloud posture, compliance, etc., the only alternative for somebody to attain that level of sovereignty is about a 4 to 6 week deployment of something on-prem at a typical enterprise speed, where we're up and running in 15 minutes. So that again is a big differentiator. And as Orika mentioned, I think when you think HTCD plus AWS native with Security Lake, with App Fabric, Guard Duty, Inspector, and more, you're talking everything from vulnerability scanning and container scanning to inventory, user activity, anomaly detection on roles and users, access management, things like that, all coming analytics on SaaS applications that you have, such as GitLab, HubSpot, and more. It all comes together in one place. So HTC plus AWS really becomes that comprehensive solution for a lot of folks that helps you, maximize your cloud credits or what you're doing with AWS. It's very frictionless. You're not building custom data pipelines or integrating, 76 tools or 76 security tools that enterprises sometimes can have based on surveys and reports. So it makes it really fast, frictionless, and easy. So that's a lot of words, but that's some of the impact that I'll say. So yeah, with that, I think we've answered most of the questions. I know I didn't get to one, and I think we'll take this as the last one. It says, you mentioned AI. What are the areas you're using AI? And is there any agent taking out data from my environment? So Orika, if you can just go back a slide, we'll talk about AI. But the answer to the question posed by our audience is, look, within compliance, what we use it for is where we're able to rapidly onboard new frameworks for any industry, any geography, or your proprietary framework within 2, max 3 business days. That is something where we're actually using AI to codify a framework and get it right. So that's a little invisible or transparent to you, the end user, but it's something that actually gets you what you need. That's one. The second is prioritization, as we showed, where it's very important that if you have at scale, typically 100,000 issues, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations in your environment, and this is not uncommon. I've dealt with this in finance and life sciences multiple occasions. You have no time and not enough money to solve those 100,000 things. Moreover, your CIO doesn't have, and your business doesn't have the appetite for potential downtime that's required in your applications or your infrastructure to resolve all those issues. So when you have 100,000, we will help you find and identify what is that 3 to 5% that's most important. And within that 3 to 5%, what is the absolute most important issue that helps you actually reduce risk the most? And that's something we do. We leverage AI for as well. Orika showed you the natural language search. We were very, very, I'll say proudly, the first to ever have that in the industry. That is something that is being replicated by many others. But we're proud of what our AI search can do, especially things when you ask it things like, show me something from 2 weeks ago. LLMs are not very good at interpreting time. They're not very good at getting very, very specific to AWS or other clouds, all kinds of schemas. But thanks to the research and development our team has put in, the innovation over the past year, we're very proud of the results that can actually bring to you and make sure that everyone in your organization is empowered to get the most out of their security data. You don't have to learn 10 query languages. You don't have to be in the weeds. And if you're a large enterprise that's got offshore teams, managed services, beyond, they can all use it to actually drive value for you. We talked a little about remediation. We showed a little about next steps. We're very excited that later this month we'll actually have generated code, whether it's infrastructure as code or actual step-by-step implementation for patches for vulnerabilities. That is all Gen AI driven. So that's a little bit about generative AI. As we said before, we do run on your environment. We show you things in the browser, in your browser, real time and just in time as you request. We do not store any of your data. That is audited by some of our auditors on an ongoing basis. And the only other thing is you could technically check your Athena logs. If you want to get technical, you could check your Cloudflare logs as to what is consumed by HTCD. So it's not just us telling you something and take our word for it. It's that if you really want to look under the covers, you could effectively audit us by yourself as it relates to you. So I think that's answering there. Okay, one very last question. Can we observe third-party SaaS tools that are connected to my enterprise? Ross and Orika, either of you want to take that?
So I think we talked a little bit about the App Fabric integration. So I think that's where you were going. And I talked about custom sources. So App Fabric in its whole ecosystem of SaaS integration is a custom source. And so the answer is yes. I think Orika had some better dashboards, and she had a nice graphic, like 2 or 3 back. That was, I think, a better picture than Ross's hand waving. The answer is yes. You can bring SaaS applications. Remember, for Security Lake, it's got to be OCSF. And so is the SaaS partner giving you the logs in OCSF? Or are you giving it through App Fabric to Security Lake, to HTCD? That's the Security Lake portion. Yes, OCSF.
Yeah, I think Ross pretty much covered it. Security Lake's quite powerful and it's able to do that.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think the answer is yes, overwhelmingly yes. And for those who aren't aware, App Fabric is another service, that's offered by AWS that is focused on normalizing data from many SaaS applications to one format. That format can be OCSF. It very cleanly integrates with Security Lake, and HTC actually helps deploy all of that for you in your environment for no cost, really. That's just an enabler we have that you can deploy it. And because of that, our customers are actually able to analyze their M365 or Microsoft 365 data, for example, Teams data, Exchange data, etc. And the same can be said for Salesforce, Slack, HubSpot, GitLab, GitHub, and approximately 60 something more tools. So yes, very comprehensive SaaS monitoring as it relates to AWS. And outside of all things AWS, the answer still remains yes. Happy to share that if you ping us. But yeah, with that, I know we're a few minutes over, and seems like we still have folks, but wanted to thank everyone for making today's session. I hope we answered your questions. Loved how many questions we had, and the fact that we were able to devote a good 25 minutes to just answering questions after an amazing presentation and a nice spiffy demo courtesy of Ross and Orika. So Ross, Orika, thank you so much for being on today's episode and kicking it off. We'd love to feature you again, and I'm sure we'd love to have way more folks partake the next time as well. If anyone's question did not get answered, please do write to us at contact@htcd.com. You can write to us about anything. If you want to talk cloud in general, if you want to talk AWS, you want to talk FinOps, you want to talk security, you just want to talk about network, that's perfectly fine. And Ross, if you'd want folks reaching out to you, I'll let you share here, or we're happy to direct those requests to you if people want to learn more about Security Lake and get started. So, but we love the service, and thanks so much for doing this with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is great. I'd love to see the demo. I think securitylake-info at amazon.com works. If that bounces because I forgot and didn't have enough coffee yet, do contact at HTCD. They know how to find me more ways than one.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you, Ross. Thank you, Orika. And thank you to everyone that's joined us. Have a great rest of your day or evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.